Well, tonight, believe it or not, folks, we're going to be preaching about fear. Fear. Oh, man, how many people love scary movies? Raise your hand. Love scary movies. Raise it high. Don't be ashamed if you love scary movies. Okay. How many people hate scary movies? Raise your hand. Okay. How many people have changed where you went from loving to hating or hating to loving? Raise your hand. Okay. So I used to, as a child growing up, there was a movie rental place right by my house. We could walk to it. And it was one of those shady movie rental places where what I mean by that is that it didn't matter what age you were, you could rent rated R movies. Fantastic for kids. And so me and my friend would walk there after school on Friday, and we would rent a bunch of scary movies. All the classics. I've seen them all, unfortunately. And we would watch these in his basement because we couldn't watch them at my house. My parents wouldn't let me. And so I'd watch them at his house and never tell my parents about it. Hope they're not watching on live stream. Just turn it off, Mom and Dad. Turn it off. And we'd watch all these scary movies. And you know what happened? I watched all these scary movies, and I couldn't sleep at night. I was a 13, 14-year-old boy, proud to be 13 and 14, strong, and ready to face the world. And I had to sleep with the lights on. I scared myself to death. And I did this so much and so often that now I hate scary movies. I finally was able to get away from scary movies long enough to where I could sleep at night, and I vowed never to go back to scary movies again. But last night, I rented a scary movie. And you know who hates scary movies more than me? My wife. And I went to the movie rental place, and I rented Captain Underpants for the kids. And we watched that, and that was fantastic. And then the kids went to bed, and I slid into that Blu-ray player this movie called Split. Now, I don't know if anybody's seen this movie. It's scary. It's a very scary movie. And we watch this movie, and it gets done, and it ends, and it's like time to go to bed. And we're both staring at each other, and we're like, I need at least a solid hour of something else going into my eyes because I cannot just go right to bed right now. And this movie scared us. It put fear in us. You know what I notice when your fear is in your heart, in your life, you know what you do? You do a few funny things. You look over your shoulder. And actually, you know, the movie ends and it's done, and I turn on the TV and I start watching a little bit Monday Night Football, and I watch a little bit of American Pickers, and I'm trying to cleanse my soul. I'm trying to cleanse my brain a little bit. And we did this, you know, for about an hour, and we're finally like, you know what, I think I'm okay. I think I can go to bed. And so Jen just goes right upstairs. She leaves me alone. And I have to turn off all the lights. I've got to put the dog away. I've got to make sure all the doors are locked, all the windows. And I finally get the last light off, and I start walking towards the stairway, and I'm like looking over my shoulder. Because I'm like scared. Fear will cause you to look over your shoulder. Fear will cause you to see things that aren't really there. You'll be able to see things that aren't really there. Have you ever done that to yourself where you're like, you thought you saw something, you were convinced you saw something, you were convinced you heard something? How many people were sleeping in their house, and in the middle of the night, you swear that you heard your door open and shut? Raise your hand. I've had that too. What is that? What is that? Is the door really opening and shut, and the guy just decided not to rob you and kill you? I don't know what's going on there. But I tell you not, I kid you not, many times I've heard my back sliding glass door slide shut. What's up with that? It scares me half to death. You know, fear will cause you to live a life less than your potential. Live a life less than your potential. You know, Scripture talks about how Jesus wants to give you a sound sleep, great rest. You know, Scripture talks about this a lot. Peace and rest and a sound mind. And when you live in fear, you don't have peace, you don't have rest, you don't have a sound mind. You live a life less than your potential. Now, fear is nasty. And fears, all of us could have lots of different fears too. Many kinds of different fears. My sister, a powerful woman of God who was speaking at Princess Warrior this weekend, did you know that she is terrified of flying? She is terrified of flying. She's had a number of really bad, scary experiences on an airplane. that have caused her to be very scared to fly. And she'll send us our family texts sometimes to say, I'm about to hop on a plane. Please pray for the peace of God in my life. And what if she let that fear conquer her? You know what would happen is she wouldn't get on that plane. She wouldn't go do things. She'd live a life less than her potential. And we all have different fears. And fear grips us. This is how fear grips us. Whenever we believe that apart from or in spite of our best efforts, whenever we believe that apart from or in spite of our best efforts, something undesirable is going to happen and we can't stop it. That's when we really, truly fear. Something undesirable is going to happen, and no matter how hard we try, we can't stop it from happening. You know, I think about even when I lock down my house at night, I just think about simply, really, truly, if the man really wanted to get into my house, he could. He could break a window. He could bang the door open. I mean, it is a deadbolt, yes, but it's just a little deadbolt. And I could take something and ram it in the door and get it open, right? And fear grips us that despite our best efforts or in spite of our efforts, something bad is going to happen and we can't stop it. That's when fear really grips us. You know, fear in us, when you have fear inside of you, you know what it does? It diminishes the way that we reflect God's glory. You know, if you're a Christian here tonight, you reflect God's glory. You are, most of the time, you are the only Jesus people will see. So you are a mere image of Jesus. As a matter of fact, Christian means little Christ. You are a little Jesus Christ walking around. You reflect Jesus. But when you let fear into your life, you know what happens when fear gets in there? Fear will diminish and dull the light and the reflection of God's glory. You'll dull it to yourself. You know, when you live in fear and you're trying to be an overcomer, even your own ideas of God shrink. You don't believe God is able when you live in fear. You don't see God as your all-powerful overcomer for your life. It'll diminish Jesus and God in your own life, and then it'll diminish the way other people see God in you. It's funny. We all actually have a different idea of who God is. Each of us in here, I could interview you. Each of us in here, if we really took time to think about God and who God is and what He represents and where He is and how He reacts and how He makes decisions and how He operates, we all would describe God a bit different. Why is that? It's because each of us have lived such different, unique lives that it's actually determined the way that we look in view at God. And when you live in fear, fear will dull the light of God in your own life and as you reflect God to others. Interesting, huh? So how does fear show itself in our lives? There's few ways. Many times it's not just this simple thing called fear. It can show itself in many different forms and in many different ways. So this is how you know you're living in fear. Is if you have terror. Has anybody ever had a nightmare, a night terror? Oh, I've had that. I've woke up sweaty and scared and nervous and thinking, I can't recover from that night terror that I had, that nightmare that I had. I need time to recover from that. It can reflect itself in your life with anxiety. If you have anxiety, you're living in fear. It can reflect itself as nervousness. If you're nervous about things, you're living in fear. Worry, stress. If you're stressed, think about that. If you're just simply stressed out in life, that means you are dealing with a fear. Think about that. If you dread things, if you dread situations, if you dread an interview, if you dread going to work, if you dread going to class, if you don't want to encounter certain things, you're living with a fear. And also, fear can reveal itself in your life with just tension. Relationship tension, tension in your shoulders, tension in your life, tension in the workplace. These means that fear is in your life. And there's 3 reasons that fear is in our lives. And you will have one of these or all of these, okay? We all deal with fear. Think about that. We're all the same tonight. Every single one of us is dealing with a fear, a tension, an anxiety, a nervousness, a stress, a terror. We're all dealing with something. Every single one of us. Think about that. Think about the person sitting next to you. They are dealing with a fear. And so are you. And there's 3 ways why we deal with fears. The first one is this. We call it conditioning. It's how you were raised. Some of us were raised in a household of worry and fear. As a matter of fact, my grandma, my dad called her a professional worrier. I mean, a constant worrier all the time. And some of us were raised in homes like this. We were conditioned, raised to live in fear. Our mom and dad would not let us go on the sidewalk even outside of on our yard, right? Stay in the grass. Don't go on the sidewalk. Don't go on the street. Page me every 5 minutes. Text me every 5 minutes when you're out. And it's fear, fear, fear. You are conditioned growing up, some of you, to constantly think that something bad is going to happen to you, right? And some of us have when we're conditioned and raised to live in fear, that's hard to overcome. Another reason why we have fears is we call it concealing. Concealing, and this is what I mean by that. If you have a sin that you are concealing and hiding from the people in your life, that will begin to manifest itself as fear. Why? The reason you are concealing is because you don't want to be embarrassed or ashamed with the people in your life. You don't want to show people who you really are because you want them to think that you're better than that. And so you are afraid to be who you really are. Now, I think that this is the number one reason that our generation is afraid. I think this one right here is the number one reason that our generation has the highest suicide rate ever. I think this one right here is the reason that our generation is more depressed than any other generation ever in the history. Think about this, concealing. We try so hard to be perfect, but you can't be perfect. And what we do is we put up mask after mask after mask with every way possible. And it's easy now through social media and texting and emailing. You can think a long time before you respond so that when you put your words together, they sound absolutely perfect. We rarely have real, true, face-to-face conversations anymore. And I'll tell you right now, boy, our generation is craving real, true relationships. I mean, I'm craving it. It is what you are lacking that you might not even have realized right now. If you're depressed, anxious, stressed, it's mostly because you really, truly don't have somebody that loves who you are and all your mistakes and all your flaws and all your fears. You've never truly confessed to somebody who you really are, who your darkest and deepest secrets are. You've never told anybody, and that is killing you on the inside and is causing you to not live at your full potential. You're concealing. Reminds me of this episode in Seinfeld where Jerry and George really had they all had superficial relationships. They never got deep. They never had any real conversations, but finally, Jerry convinced George to tell him, please, George, tell me everything you're capable of. Tell me it all. And so George begins to spill his guts to Jerry, just tells him everything he's capable of, all of his thoughts and desires, everything he's ever thought of. And you know what happened? It scared Jerry. And that's what we're afraid of. And Jerry did not put his arms around George and say, I love you now more than everybody. No, what happened was he said, I don't know if I can handle this. He literally just said, this is too much for me. And that's kind of what we're afraid of, is that when we truly reveal somebody who we really are, that they're going to go, I don't want to be a part of it. And see, that's why. But many of us, our generation especially, let me just beg you and cry out to you, please, get real with people. Get real. Get real with people. And the third reason why we have fear, conditioning, concealing, and controlling. Controlling. We want to control everything. And if you live long enough, you realize you cannot control every conversation, every relationship, every decision that people make in your life. People will leave your life. People will hurt you. People will decide that they don't want to be your friend anymore. People will leave your workplace that you don't want to leave. People will move out of the state that you don't want to move out of the state. Your life, your relationships will shift and change. And if you're a control freak, I won't make you raise your hand if you are, but all this, people who really, really, really want to control everything that happens, they live in a tremendous fear. The fear that they can't control it all, that it's all going to come crumbling down. So these are 3 reasons why we live in fear. And I'm going to give you the antidote to fear tonight. I'm going to give you the prescription. I'm going to give you the medicine tonight. You ready? The antidote to fear isn't boldness and courage. It's not the antidote to fear. You know what the antidote to fear is? Faith. Faith. And you're like, well, man, I need something more than that. There's nothing more than that. You're like, I need something practical, Pastor Luke. I need to walk away with something more. There's nothing more. And I want to tell you why. You know, sometimes when we read the Bible and we read about people like David who killed Goliath, and we read about stories in the Bible of people doing great things, we tell ourselves, I'm going to be David. We tell ourselves, I want to be like Peter. I want to do these things. I want to be David. But you know, anytime somebody in the Bible does something courageous, you know who that courageous person is representing? They're representing Jesus. They're representing Jesus. So what does that mean? That means you cannot be Jesus. So don't put yourself in David's shoes. Say, David was representing Jesus. So what does that mean for me? I don't need to be bold. I don't need to be courageous. I just need to have faith that Jesus is defeating my enemies for me. See, sometimes we get confused, and we're like, I just need to be more bold. I just need to be more courageous. I need to find my 5 smooth stones. I need to walk on the water. I need to do that. No. What you need to do is understand that Jesus has 5 smooth stones, and that Jesus is walking on the water, and that Jesus is fighting all the battles for you, and you need to put your faith in Jesus, not faith in your own boldness, and not your ideas in your own courage, You see, if you think you need to be more bold, if you think you need to be more courageous, you know what you'll get? You'll get more anxious and more depressed and more sunken low. But when you realize, I just need to put my faith in Jesus and he's going to take care of it for me, that takes all the weight off your shoulders and it puts your faith in the right road, down the right lane. You need to have faith. And faith is proved in our worship. That's awesome. Let me read to you 1 Samuel chapter 17, verses 20 through 24. It says, So David left the sheep with another shepherd and set out early the next morning with the gifts. As Jesse had directed him, he arrived at the camp just as the Israelite army was leaving for the battlefield with shouts and battle cries. Soon the Israelites and the Philistine forces stood facing each other, army against army. David left his things with the keeper of supplies and hurried out to the ranks to greet his brothers. As he was walking with them, Goliath, the Philistine champion from Gath, came out from the Philistine ranks. Then David heard him shout his usual taunt to the army of Israel. As soon as the Israelite army saw him, they began to run away in fright. If this doesn't describe me, and if this doesn't describe you, then you're lying to yourself. And I'm going to tell you why. Because every single Sunday and Tuesday night, we're like the Israelite army, where we grab our stuff, we put on our suit coat, we put on our tie, we put on our shoes, we put on our skinny jeans, and we call up our girlfriend, we text our girlfriend, hey, you going to be at church, honey? I hope you are, because if you ain't going to be there, I ain't coming either. And, it's the superficial Christianity that we live. Am I preaching to anybody tonight? Okay, it hurts makes sense, so it means I'm talking truth. And we finally make it to church because everything lined up perfectly. We look good, and we're worshiping Jesus, and the worship was awesome, and the pastor preached a great message, and we leave that place, and we're like the Israelite army. We all got all lined up. We got all ready. We got all lined up. And we stood out there, and then all of a sudden, this giant came out and said something, and it scared us, and we run away. Ah! And if this Israelite army doesn't describe the church today, then I don't know what does. Because it's who we are. We got the outfit on, and we're singing all the right songs. We're standing in line how we should stand, and we got our spear and our sword, and we're ready to go. And we believe what we're doing, and we're all right there. But as soon as the enemy says something, we run away. And this is so strange to me, this scenario here in this Bible verse. I mean, this guy's doing this for 40 days in a row. So you're telling me 40 days in a row, this stupid army is just lining up in ranks and waiting for Goliath to say something so they can run away? This is the weirdest army ever. I mean, really? Really, every single day? We're talking about a pointless existence at this point. I mean, come on, what are you in the army for? This is the strangest thing in the world. But you know what? This describes me. Because I get on my armor of God. And I'm out there too. And I'm preaching and I'm reading the word and I'm studying. But I'm telling you right now, it feels like as soon as Goliath says something nasty to me, I run away and I'm scared. I live in fear. We all are living in fear. We're all afraid of the enemy's taunts. We're all afraid. Now, this is interesting. Romans 10 verse 17 says this. It says, so faith comes from hearing, that is, hearing the good news about Christ. Faith comes from hearing, that is, hearing the good news about Christ. Matthew 14, 30 through 31. But when he saw the strong wind and waves, he was terrified and began to sink. Peter, I need you up here. Peter, Simon, Peter, on this rock I'll build my church. I need you up here. I didn't know Pastor Ben was dressing up as Peter tonight, but he is, and this works really well. And so, thank you. Can we please give it up for Simon Peter? All right, get behind me, Satan. But when he saw the strong wind and waves, he was terrified and began to sink. Save me, Lord, he shouted. Jesus immediately reached out and grabbed him. You have so little faith, Jesus answered. Why did you doubt me? He didn't look at Peter and say, why weren't you more bold? He didn't look at Peter and say, why didn't you have more courage? He just said, where's your faith? Where's your faith in me? And you know, this is interesting because Jesus reaches out and he responds immediately. And that's good news for us. But it's interesting, he just asked Peter, where is your faith? Go ahead, thank you, Simon Peter. Thank you so much. Thank you. And tonight, we must ask ourselves this question. Jesus asked Peter, and we must ask ourselves this question. Where is my faith? What is my faith level? Who is God? Do I believe in him? Do I have faith in him tonight? The antidote to fear is not boldness or courage, but the antidote to fear is faith. And faith is proved in our worship. Not faith in yourself, not faith in your family, not faith in your friends, not faith in your job, not faith in your strength, not faith in your bank account, not faith in your house that you just bought, not faith in the nice car that you just got. No. Faith in God alone. God alone. So how do we overcome fear? Number one, know that Jesus is able. He is able. You know, when Peter was sinking, and Peter shouts out, Jesus, save me. The Bible actually says that Jesus responds immediately. Immediately. There's no more testing. There was no more anything. You cry out to Jesus, he's right there. Boom. He's there immediately. But this is interesting because Jesus pulls Peter up out of the sinking into the water, but the wind and the waves are still going. Because the Bible says that the wind and the waves didn't stop until they got back into the boat. And so sometimes this is like this. Sometimes we're in the storm. Has anybody ever been in a storm? I mean, life. Whoa. Right? And we're like, Jesus, help! And you cry out to Jesus with everything that you have, your anger, your anxiety, your depression, your worries, your fears. Jesus! Why? And you cry out, he is immediately there. But I want to tell you this, the storm doesn't always stop right away. Does it? Does it? Sometimes Jesus can be pulling you up right in the middle of the waves. Has anybody ever lived their Christianity like that? Where you are living in a storm, but Jesus is still walking right there with you. This describes my faith. This describes my relationship with God. That his son, Jesus Christ, is walking with me. He is able. He is there, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the storm has stopped. It just means that he's walking with me. And he's taking you somewhere. And you got to trust and believe that he's going to take you back to the boat and that the storm is going to stop. I don't know how far out they were from the boat. I mean, it doesn't matter. If you've been at sea during a storm, it doesn't matter if you're 5 feet, 10 feet, or 20 feet away from that boat, you're screwed. 5 feet might as well be 5,000 feet. Because those wind and those waves, you ain't getting back to the boat. And this is life, man, where we're like, Jesus, I need you. And Jesus is just waiting for you to call out to him. He is waiting for you to just break. He's waiting for everything in your life to fail so that it's just you and Jesus. And when it's just you and Jesus, that's where you need to be. That's where you need to be. And he's able. Jesus is able. Let me read to you point number 2 on how to overcome fear. Set Jesus before you. So I need set Jesus before you. Let me read this verse. Psalm 16, verse 8. I have set the Lord always before me. Because he is at my right hand, I shall not be moved. I need my illustrators out here. Where's Jason? Jason, he's there he is. Thank you so much. Jason, believe it or not, represents Jesus. And I'll be right now, if I get to heaven and I see this as Jesus, I'll be happy. I'll be so excited, like, oh my gosh, that's Jesus. Oh, I'm going to worship. I'd be so excited. You know, and okay, can you hold it up higher? Yeah, and wait, turn it over. Hold it long ways like a hot dog, not a hamburger. Let go. Hold that edge right there. Drop that. Awesome. Oh, he's got it. So I can't see. Come over to me, closer to me, Jesus. Thank you. Just like that. Closer. Okay, right there. You can see me, right? That's good. That's good right there, Jesus. Yeah. This represents Jesus. Jeez, Jesus is frustrating me. Just joking, not really. This is like Jesus. You know, this is what happens. This is what happens in life is that we live in fear. We live in fear about things, that things are going to come at us, going to destroy us, going to take us out. But when you put Jesus up, when you set Jesus before you, you know what he does? He blinds you. He blinds your eyes from the enemy. Because sometimes the enemy comes out and he is nasty and he is scary and he is unexpected and he just comes out. But when you got Jesus up, you can't see that nasty thing. You don't see that thing coming all your life. You're just like, oh, Lord, I'm worshiping. If you can't see me over there, I'm worshiping and I'm loving Jesus. And the enemy could be all around, but you're just like this. I don't see nothing. Is anybody living their life like this? The Bible clearly tells you to set Jesus before you. You see, because when Jesus goes away, go away, Jesus. Just go away, Jesus. All of a sudden, you can see this nasty enemy right here. Some weird enemy from Power Rangers. But this is what happens. But go ahead, come back, Jesus. I'm going to set Jesus before me. Come back. Go ahead to block him. There you go. And you're just like, oh, I don't know what's going on. I don't see it. I don't feel it. You know, if you don't see it, it ain't there. Is it? And okay, thank you so much. Everybody give it up for my people. You know, set Jesus before you. Put him up in your life. Read the Word of God. Number 3, how to overcome. Name what's keeping you up at night. Name it. If you're just telling Jesus, Lord, I'm scared. I'm depressed. Lord, I'm anxious. God, I'm fearful. You know what you're doing? You're not naming what's actually keeping you up at night. You're not getting to the root. Everybody say, get to the root. You got to get to the root. You know what the root is? You know what it is? It's a person, most likely. What's stressing you out in life? It's people. It's a relationship. It's an unpaid bill. You know what you need? You need a name what's keeping you up at night. Let me give you some examples. You need to say, Jesus, this $1,000 medical bill, I can't pay it. I don't know what to do. I'm going to give it to you tonight, Jesus, because you are bold, you are big, you are courageous, you are strong, you are almighty, you are perfect, you are amazing, you own a cattle on 1,000 hill, and I am really, truly none of those things, Jesus. And so I'm just going to hand it to you tonight, Jesus, so I can sleep. Some of you need to say this, Lord, I'm scared of this chemotherapy, right? I'm scared of this disease. I'm scared of this session. Lord, I'm mad about my work because Bill got promoted and I should have got promoted. Bill got a raise. Jesus, I think I deserve that raise more than him. And this is what's making me anxious. And this is what's making me full of tension. And this is what's making me angry. You need to name what's keeping you up at night. You know, some of you just need to say, I don't like Stacy's boyfriend. I don't like this relationship, Lord. This guy, I don't trust him. I don't like it, Lord, but tonight, I'm giving him to you. Lord, tonight, I'll let you know, I don't think I'm going to pass my chemistry test. I don't think I'm going to pass this class, God. And I'm anxious and I'm nervous, but I'm going to give it to you tonight. You got to name what's keeping you up at night. You've got to get specific. And the last thing here, how do we overcome fear? Is we have to fill our mouths with praise. And let me encourage you with this. Worship and worry cannot occupy the same space. You know, something awesome when we worship, we're about to do it. And it's pretty wild when you worship. If something happens, a miracle happens. You know what happens is you actually begin to forget about your worries and your stresses and your fears and your struggles and your plans that aren't quite working out and your future that's really unknown. And you begin to worship, and you know what begins to happen is all that worry, it cannot be in the same space as your worship. It can't be in the same space. I'll read it to you again, and then we're going to worship. The antidote to fear is not boldness or courage, but the antidote to fear is faith, and faith is proved in our worship. Faith is proved in our worship. So we're going to end the night with some worship. You guys ready? All right, let's stand to our feet tonight. And I'm going to pray as we worship that your worries, it cannot occupy the same space as your worship. And so you need to replace your worry with worship tonight. Your fears with faith. Amen? Let's worship.